Hey, it's Squidly coming to you from my back porch, my backyard, on a beautiful fall afternoon. And what I'm going to be sharing with you today are my first impressions on the Plexamid tent, how it sets up, and why I switched. I'm the boss when Mrs. Squidly's not around. Okay, so I recently switched to the Zpacks Plexamid, and that seems kind of odd to say because I really did like my Gossamer Gear, the 2. Still do. It's a fantastic tent, so don't misunderstand what I'm saying there. But my circumstances sort of changed. I had that Gossamer Gear, the 2, for a couple of reasons. One is I like the size of it, and I guess I'll put up here in the cards an explanation of some of the pros and cons of it. It was a big tent for a 2-man. It had plenty of room for 2 people, but it had a really big footprint, so sometimes you would have trouble finding a place to put it. My circumstances changed because one is I only use one trekking pole, and that was a 2 trekking pole tent, and where I bought it thinking that one or both of my sons would be going with me on backpacking trips. As it turns out, only one goes backpacking with me, and he has a hammock setup. So this was a 2-person tent, a big 2-person tent for only one person. It just didn't make sense for me anymore. And so I got to looking for a 1-person tent that only used one trekking pole, and what I ended up settling on was the Plexamid. There are some advantages to it. I haven't come across real serious disadvantages yet. Maybe one that I'll get to in here in a second. But the advantages are that it's smaller, has a smaller footprint. It only uses one trekking pole. Like I said, the weight of this is 14 ounces, and the fact that I now only have to take one trekking pole, which I use in my hand as I'm walking. I don't have to take another trekking pole to put on my pack, so it saves me more weight there. And so altogether, this is saving me well over a pound. So was that worth it for the price of Dyneema and the expense of a Zpacks tent? Right now, I'm going to say yes. When I bought this, I saw online that there were some, I don't want to say difficulties, but it's a little tricky to set up, is everything that I saw. And when I got this, my first impression was, holy smokes, this thing is light. But I immediately wanted to, let me try to set it up. Let me see what everybody's talking about and see just how difficult this is. Well, on my first try, I got it exactly right. And that bothers me because if you get it right on your first try, you don't know why you got it right, and you don't know the things to do to make sure you get it right the first time or the next time. And so what I did is I tore it down, set it up again. Aha, I found out it did not set up exactly like it did the first time. I did some things a little bit different, and I found out what those things were. And that experience made it so that now when I tore it down, set it up a third time, I got it right, and I knew what I was doing. I knew why I got it right. Then on the trip, went to Pinhoti Trail with a group of guys, and fortunately I didn't look like a complete fool setting it up because I got it right on my first try both nights. So now what I want to do is I want to set it up here in the backyard and show you how I do it, the method that I use, and how I went about getting it right so easily. Okay, to start off with, I'm using a Polycro ground sheet. I bought 2 of them to go with my the 2 from Gossamer Gear, and I'm still using that. Width-wise, it's perfect. Length-wise, it's a little bit too long, and so you have to tuck a little bit in because if it rains and water gets on that, it's just going to go under your tent. The first key to a successful setup is when you lay it out on your ground sheet, whatever you're using as a ground sheet, and I do recommend using one, is each one of the cords for staking it out, make sure that you go ahead and extend these all the way or nearly all the way out. That's going to be key. And so as I go around now, that's going to be the first thing that I'm going to do. By extending all the cords at the corners and for the walls, by extending those all the way out, it makes it so that your setup is going to be nearly perfect from the very beginning. As you're watching this, this is the front of the tent. These are the doors, and this is the back of the tent. Now, for this tent, the stakes do not come with it. And so what I'm using are some knockoff groundhogs. Actually, these came with my gear top tent, and actually I have two bodies for that gear top, so I have a lot of stakes, and so I just stole some from it. I really like these stakes. As it turns out, they're pretty good for this. With the front here, and this is the back where I am, the first step is these two back corners. We want to stake these out first. Stake them out at about a 45-degree angle. And that's going to be the first step to making sure this is set up correctly on your first try. The next step, take your trekking pole, extend it to 48 inches. What I'm going to do now is in the top of it, in the roof, it has a little pocket for the top of your trekking pole. I'm going to extend that in there, and now stand it up. The next step is to take the cord for the front of it for the trekking pole, and where it's knotted right there, it's in the perfect spot. I'm going to go ahead and stake this out. Okay, let me go ahead and stop right here and say, this is not my method. I didn't come up with this. This is not an original Squidly thought. This ultimately comes from Bigfoot, and it is something that has been repeated by a lot of different people. And I guess basically what I'm saying is that if you follow this method, and maybe my description of it or somebody else's description of it, it just about gets this Plexamid set up just right. And the setup of it is kind of one of the, I don't want to say complaints, but a lot of people saying that this is one of the issues with the Plexamid is the setup and getting a good pitch on it. And if you follow this method, you get a good pitch pretty easily. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Now we want to stake out the other two corners, again at 45-degree angles, or as close to it as you can. One of the things for anytime there are instructions or directions on how to do something, I'm always curious for an explanation for why. Why do you do it that way? What's the advantage? And that's what this part is about. What is the advantage to doing it this way, where you have your cords here for the corners, where you've got it all the way out. And the reason why is for the bathtub floor. You see how high that's pitched? If you have these cinched down tight before you even get started, then these walls are going to come down pretty close to the ground, and that is not what you want. You want these up higher, and so because that's going to increase your airflow, and it's going to allow your bathtub floor to be extended out, to have that, to take advantage of all that height. If you don't, then your bathtub floor is going to lay down pretty flat, and if it rains or you have some water runoff, it runs the risk of actually getting in the tent. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stake out this back corner and let you get a view of what the shape is going to look like now. Again, with it extended all the way out, we'll tighten all this up as we finish. There. And now what you can see is you have, with your bathtub floor, you have all of this height, and the mesh is exposed, and so you get more airflow, and you don't run the risk of, in the middle of the night, pushing this down to where water could come in. You see, it can't extend far enough down. And that's one of the things I've heard people say is that if you don't get it right, then in the middle of the night, as you're sleeping and you push up against a wall, you could push it down where the mesh is actually on the ground. By doing it this way, you don't run that risk. I like to pull the ends out first because, frankly, that's where I need the most room, is at the head end and the foot end. These on the back, they pull out a little bit, and they do give you a little bit more volume on the inside. But one thing I noticed is, as you pull, maybe you can see, as you pull these out, it's going to pull the head end in. See that? So what I do is I stake out the head end and the foot end, and when I do these, I'm going to pull them a little bit, but only a little bit, because what I don't want to do is sacrifice, in order to gain volume this way, sacrifice the length on the foot end and the head end. And that is nearly it for setup. There are only really two things left to do. One would be to take any of the polycro that's sticking out, just sort of fold it up and push it under. The second thing is to extend the doors, and it extends. There's a loop right here, and the other end of the cord that comes from your roof has, kind of looks like an anchor, and that loop fits in here, and what I want to do is loosen it, and then I can tighten it down. All right, so I'm going to extend this, give myself all the room I need here. This is way too much. You can see that is so slack. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tighten this down a little bit, and you could do this with just one door. On the 2 nights I had on the Pinhoti, the first night the weather was perfect. It was beautiful. Stars were out, no chance of rain, and I left it open with a door rolled up. I had 0 condensation. On the second night, I knew it was going to rain, and so and there's a toggle where you can close it where it overlaps, and it overlaps significantly, so even though it's not zipped, you are not going to get water in here. Well, that's all for today from the Squidly deck and backyard. On the way out, don't forget to hit like and subscribe.